Hi, my name's Stuart Lynch, and this is the fourth and possibly final video in this series where I create a MyTallies iOS app that also has interactive and configurable widgets using AppIntents. That's what we covered in the first three videos. In this video, I'll introduce you to Siri Shortcuts and how we can invoke our intents and update any tally we want by simply uttering a phrase to Siri. I love getting your feedback, so if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment below. Make sure you ring the bell to enable notifications and get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. A link is in the description. If you're following along with this series, you can continue on with your own project, as I'm doing that here. If you skip the first three videos, you can download the completed source code from that last video from the link in the description. There are several branches, so make sure that you download the ConfigurableWidget branch, as this is the completed source code for that third video. The Siri Shortcut branch contains the completed source code for this video, and will also serve as the starter source code for the next video. You can just download and expand the zipped archive. The project does require Xcode 16. Well, we're now done with widgets and widget intents. The final part of this series is to be able to enable shortcuts for our tallies so that a user can update any given tally through either a shortcut or by speaking a defined phrase, and the process is very similar to how we created our widgets. We have two widgets, so let's start with the first one where we update the first widget. I'd like to create a shortcut for that and a phrase that Siri can respond to and execute the shortcut. Well, the nice thing about Siri Shortcuts is that they use the same kind of intents as our widgets. And for the first SimpleWidget, we can in fact use the exact same intent as we did for our first update tally intent. So in the MyTallies target, I'm going to create a new folder called Siri Shortcuts, where I'll be placing all the non-shared intent-related files and code. So inside here, I'm going to create a new file and call it MyTallies Shortcuts. I'll import AppIntents, and then I can create a struct called MyTallies Shortcuts, and it'll conform to the App Shortcuts Provider protocol. Now it has a single requirement, and that is a static variable that is called App Shortcuts. It's an array of app shortcuts, and you could define the shortcuts within the getter. You can create an app shortcut by supplying an intent, some phrases that will trigger the shortcut, and a shortcut title and a system image name. Well, our intent is our shared update tally intent. And shortcuts are run through the iOS target and not through the widget target. So in order to make this intent available to our iOS target, we'll need to reveal the inspector and then make sure that this intent is also a member of the MyTallies iOS target. Now we can create our app shortcut and choose the intent, the phrase short title, and a system image name. So let me separate these into separate lines. Our intent then is now available to us, so we can specify it. You can create an array of phrases, so you can have more than one phrase that Siri will understand to trigger the shortcut action. I'm only going to have one here, and I'm going to use the phrase update, followed by a predefined token that we can use, and that's the application name. So we need to do that within string interpolation. For the short title, I'll say update first tally. And for the system image name, I just use a one.circle.fill. So our key phrase then is update my tallies. So let's run the app in the simulator now. And I'm going to exit to the home screen without quitting. On the home screen now, if I do a search for MyTallies, you'll also see that the shortcut appears with our system image icon and the short title being used as the name. If I tap on this now, it gives me an error, and the error says that I did not return a declared value, but I provided one. That's because our intent is returning a result that our shortcut doesn't expect. In our perform function, we're returning some intent result, and when we return it, we return the value, but never use it. Well, I'm going to do one better. I'm going to change the intent result to some provides dialog. Then, instead of returning a result using a value, I'm going to return a result using a dialog. And that dialog is an intent dialog, where I can display the string updated first tally to, and then use string interpolation to display that updated value. So let me run the app now. Now, make note of what the current value of the first tally is. Do a search again and tap on the shortcut. Each time you tap on the shortcut, you get a dialog indicating what the new value is. And then if I exit back to the home screen, indeed you see that the tally has been updated there as well. Now, one last thing before we move on. We have that phrase that is expecting us to say something like update my tallies. So let's run the app again and exit to the home screen. Now, you can see from the simulator's device menu that there is an option for Siri, and it has a keyboard shortcut that I'm going to use in the future of Option, Shift, Command, and H. Now, it may take a bit for Siri to activate the first time, but you'll see when it does. And when it's activated, you can simply say, update my tallies. And the first time you do this, you'll be asked to turn on MyTallies Shortcuts with Siri.
Turn on MyTallies Shortcuts with Siri.
So let's do that.
Updated first tally to 22.
And then you'll see that the dialog responds, and it's spoken back to us, and our first tally was updated. Let me try once more. Update my tallies.
Updated first tally to 23.
Well, this is fine, but it's very limited. In fact, it's so limited that I'm only getting the first tally, and what we want to do is to extend that next to be able to trigger all tallies through a command. In fact, I think it's time to retire that first widget, as we're also going to be retiring this shortcut command as well in the future. First, the widget though. Go to the widget bundle and just comment out that first widget. We'll come back to the shortcut later. It would be nice if we could use that configuration app intent from our widget. And we might be able to do that. But I want to take this to the next level. So I will use some of the content from the intent, which also means I will need the entity and the query. And the intent will need both the entity and query before we can really finalize the intent. So let's start there. The query is the most important, and as it turns out, it's the exact same query that we used for our widget. So rather than duplicate the code, I'm going to go to that widget file that contains the query, which is the configuration app intent, and cut it out of there. I'll then do a paste to create a new file, and it will automatically be named tally query. But I'll also need to import app intents and Swift data. And then I'm going to go to the inspector and make sure that it's available to my MyTallies target as well. Now it's going to do all sorts of complaining because the MyTallies target doesn't have access yet to the tally entity. So let's take a look at that. Back in our configuration app intent, let's scroll down and find the tally entity. And I'm going to cut it out. And I'm going to paste it in to create a new file called tally entity. And then I'll import app intents. And then again, I'll make sure that I can share it with my MyTallies target. The tally query will stop complaining now. Now remember that ID property, which is the string, is also the name of the widget. So when we go ahead and make requests for our Siri shortcut, we should be able to use it. But there's one more gotcha though that I discovered. In our implementation, there is one function in the tally query that caused me problems with Siri shortcuts, and that was the default query function. Well, what that function does is it provides us with sample data to use when we are looking at the widget gallery and becomes the default tally when that widget is added to the home screen. Without it, we'd get the content unavailable view. But if we keep this here for our new Siri intent, we'll never get to see any other choices. So what I have to do is cut it out of this file here. And then I'm going to create a new file that I'm going to call tally query plus extensions. And then make sure that it's not available to the MyTallies target. So inside this file, we can create an extension on tally query and then just paste it in. Again, I'm going to check the inspector for this file and make sure that the target is for the widget target only. So now we can create our intent that can be used for shortcuts. And it's going to be different from the widget intent, but we'll use some of the same code. So I'm going to create a new file in the intents folder, and I'm going to call it update named tally intent. And this is available just for the iOS target. I'll import AppIntents, Swift Data, and WidgetKit. So within here, I'm going to create a new struct, and I'm going to call it update named tally intent that needs to conform to the AppIntent protocol. Now, as you know, this has some required properties and functions. So first, I'll need to create a static variable called title. That's a localized string resource, and I can just provide the string update named tally. And then I'll need a static variable called description that is an intent description. And here I'll just use the string select the tally to increment. And this intent will have a parameter like our widget intent that we can provide with a title of tally. And I'll create a variable name called nameEntity that will be an optional tally entity. And then the other thing that's required is a perform function. And this intent too is asynchronous that can throw an error and will return some provides dialog. Now there's no need for initializers here because our parameter is optional. We will need a function that can update our entity so long as we have a name, and that will only be if the name entity is not optional. If it isn't, then the name that we get will be our entity ID. So let's create that function, and it must be executed on the main thread. So I'm going to call the function update tally, and it's going to have a single name parameter, and we'll return an int, which is the updated value, just like we did in our widget. Now we're going to be able to find the tally by querying our array of tallies. And since we're going to be querying Swift data, we'll need a container so that we can get one called container by using a forced try to create a model container for tally.self. The predicate will be a tally predicate, and will simply return wherever the iterator's name is equal to the name that was passed in. The descriptor then will be a fetch descriptor for the tally, where the predicate is that predicate. Does this look familiar? Well, then we can fetch the array of found tallies by trying to use the container's main context to fetch that descriptor. I could have just gone and copied that other function from our widget, couldn't I? Anyway, let's carry on. We can use an if-let to unwrap the first. And then we can call the tallies increase function and then make sure it saves by trying to use the container's main context save function. And then we'll return the tally value. If it failed, we'll just return 0. Well, now that I have that function, we can use it in our perform function. First, I'll create an entity of type tally entity. And I'm going to start with a new value as an int being 0. And for the tally name, I'll initialize it as an empty string. If we provide a name entity, we can use it using an iflet to unwrap it. And then we can update by awaiting the update tally function and pass in the name, which is our name entity's ID. And then we can assign the name entity to the entity and the new value to the update value. And then we can set the tally name to the entity.id property. With that, then we can call the Widget Center's shared instance to reload all timelines. And then we can return the result using a dialog, providing the string, updated, and now using string interpolation, we can provide the tally name to, again, string interpolation to provide the new value. It looks like I forgot the title label for that parameter. Now we can return to the MyTallies Shortcuts file and comment out that first one because we'll no longer need it, but we can leave it here for reference. And then I'm going to replace it with a new app shortcut. And the intent will be our new update named tally intent. For the phrase, I'm going to use our name entity as a variable. So update. And then using string interpolation, within the string interpolation, I'll use a backslash dot and then $ name entity with string interpolation using the application name token. So this means I can say something like update alpha with MyTallies or update beta with MyTallies. And then the short title is going to be update selected tally. And for the system image name, this time I'm going to use plus.circle.fill. So let's test this out to run it to see what we get. I'm going to exit to the home screen. And let me drag the Shortcuts app out onto the home screen and take a look at the shortcuts. So let's open it up and search for MyTallies. And I don't see any shortcuts at all. So something's gone wrong. Well, what we need to do is to make one more critical function call when our app loads. So in the app entry point, I'm going to create an initializer. And then within there, in the initializer, we can make a call to the MyTallies Shortcuts update app shortcuts parameters function. It's a static function. And what this will do is it will actually go and find all of the shortcuts that are required. So in our case, it's just going to be one for each of our tallies and make them available to the shortcuts. So let's run once more. Exit to the home screen and open the shortcuts again. So now you see, in my case, I've got 3 shortcuts, one for alpha, one for beta, one for delta, my 3 tallies. However, before we do that, there are 2 more cases where we had better call that function to update the shortcuts parameter. And that's when we add a new tally and when we delete one. So I'm going to copy that static function. And then I'm going to open the new tally view and add that function right where I call the add action before dismissing. And similarly in the tally selection view, in the trash action, I'm going to call the function when I delete a tally. So let's test this out now by running the app and exiting to the home screen. And I'm going to invoke my Siri Shortcuts by testing to see if I can update all 3 tallies. Update alpha with MyTallies.
Updated alpha to 24.
Update beta with MyTallies.
Updated beta to 7.
Update delta with MyTallies.
Updated delta to 6.
What happens if I try to update a tally that doesn't exist? Update epsilon with MyTallies.
Okay, I found this on the web for update epsilon with MyTallies. Check it out.
Well, Siri just does its thing and suggests something from the web. So now, if we can find all tallies, we should be able to provide a list. And indeed, we do have a function for that elsewhere in our code. And we used it in our tally query as suggested tallies. So let's just go there and copy that function. And it's providing us with all of the suggested entities and returning a tally entity. So we can create an else clause in our perform function when the named entity is not provided. Or we can create a Siri list of all of our entities and assign the selected one to a variable that we'll call unnamed entity. And we do this by trying and awaiting our name entity parameters request disambiguation function among all suggested entities and provide a dialog to the user, which is an intent dialog using the string select a tally to update. Once it's selected, we can let the updates be the result of awaiting our call to the update tally function by passing in the unnamed entity's ID as the name. And then we can let the entity that we are creating be the unnamed entity now. And then the tally name will be the unnamed entity's ID property. And the new value will be the update. So now we have something else that we can trigger by a different phrase. So we'll go to our app shortcut. And for the phrase, well, since we commented on our first widget, why don't we use that same phrase here, the update application name token. So let's test this out now by running in the simulator. I'll exit to the home screen. I can invoke Siri and say the command, update MyTallies.
Select a tally to update alpha, beta, or delta.
And after selecting one, the tally is updated.
Updated delta to 7.
I have one more thing that I'd like to cover before finishing this series and this video. When our shortcut has been completed, we get a rather boring dialog displayed, and we can improve on that. Let's create a new SwiftUI file in our iOS target and call it Tally Updated View. And this view is what will display once the shortcut has been completed instead of that dialog. So we'll need 2 properties to display. First, a tally name as a string, and a new value as an int. And you can stop the preview from complaining by providing some sample data. So for example, for our tally name, we'll just say beta. And for the new value, let's just pick an int of 35. So let's now replace the body content with an H stack. And then within the H stack, I'll create a text view using string interpolation to display the new value. And then add some padding. And then set the background to a rounded rectangle. Apply a corner radius of 10. And then use a stroke with a line width of 3. Then follow this in the H stack with another text view displaying the tally name using string interpolation, followed by the string has been updated. And then to the entire H stack, set the font to a large title, add some padding, and finally add a background using a color of system background. Now in the preview, it's taking up the entire view. But if you want to see what it might look like, you can add a trait to the preview, and that trait is size that fits layout. Still, the preview didn't change any, but if you go into selectable mode, you'll see how it will look in real size. So let's return now to the update named tally intent. And then I need to change the perform function by returning not only sum provides dialog, but also and shows snippet view. And then where you return a result, I can add a new argument of view and supply your tally updated view, passing in tally name for the tally name and new value for the new value. Well, it's time to test one more time. So again, let's run this in the simulator and exit the home screen. And then let's invoke Siri with some commands. Update alpha with MyTallies.
Updated alpha to 25.
Let's try that picker command and see if it still works. Update MyTallies.
Select a tally to update alpha, beta, or delta. Updated alpha to 26.
Brilliant. Well, that's it for this video, but I decided that I should probably do one more video, and that's to create a watchOS target for this same app. So that's what's going to be coming in the final video. I hope you've gained some insights though, and some useful tips so that you can start implementing widgets, AppIntents, and Siri shortcuts in your own projects going forward. If you've enjoyed the series so far, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment below. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and enable notifications so that you're made aware of new videos that I release. And you can also download my free channel listing app to be able to search for and find content from any one of my close to 350 Swift and SwiftUI related videos.